Let's take a look at him.
Wow, so she's really tall. I've never seen that either in a vampire.
Hi guys, my name's Anna from Anna Psychology, the YouTube channel. I'm also a clinical psychology doctoral candidate, and today we're going to be looking at Resident Evil Village. I am also Romanian, and I'm told this is based on Romanian vampires, so that is something that I'm more than familiar with, and I am very interested in vampire mythology as well, so let's check it out.
So you can see us starting out in a castle. Castle Dimitrescu. That is definitely a Romanian name. Any name that ends in escu tends to be Romanian. And are those bats or bugs that are turning into women?
Man blood.
Okay, so they seem to be vampires. They do have some scenes in Dracula the movie where there are 3 she-vampires and they are usually attacking the guests, so far I would say it's pretty similar to that. I've never seen a vampire with a hat like that before. Wow, so she's really tall. I've never seen that either in a vampire, the idea of them being very tall or very large. The castle kind of reminds me of Sinaia Palace at Sinaia in Romania. Not so much like Bran Castle, which is associated with Dracula, but it does have the more regal intricacies of the Peleș Castle in Sinaia. So I've heard of vampires shape-shifting into other forms like bats or wolves or fog. Never in something like a dragon, but I guess that makes sense because Dracula was supposed to originally mean son of the dragon. These days it means more son of the devil, and it's kind of interesting how it's progressed to that from dragon to devil. So a lot of the mythology surrounding vampires came from Bram Stoker's book Dracula. It's loosely based on Vlad Tepes, who was a ruler, Vlad the Impaler in Romania, and he kind of got this reputation as being bloodthirsty, and that's where this idea of him as a vampire came from because he was a very strict ruler. They said that he at one point left a silver chalice in the middle of town and no one would touch it, no one would steal it because they were afraid that he would cut their arm off. So he was definitely bloodthirsty. There's nothing to suggest he was actually a vampire. Of course, there are always rumors that arose after that, such as saying that his wife bathed in blood to stay youthful, things like that. It's not clear if there's that much truth to them. What I will say is that Romanians do tend to revere him. He doesn't have the same reputation as he does to foreigners as being this really bad guy, because he did bring order to Romania. He did stop crime, and he essentially eradicated poverty by killing poor people. The game definitely seems to be based on Romanian people because it uses the lei currency and also the name Dimitrescu, like I mentioned, very Romanian. Dimitrescu actually, I think, has some symbolism regarding some Christian martyrs, but also before that it's associated with the Greek cult of Demeter. Demeter was the goddess of the harvest and also the cycle of life and death. So that makes sense as well because vampires are also something that's associated with the cycle of life and death.
Bullets cannot harm.
It seems like in that scene the daughters morphed into bugs, which is interesting because usually it's turning into one singular bat. Because bats are also associated with blood sucking, those are more Latin American bats though. The bats in Europe are actually pretty much just vegetarian. They just have berries and sugar, but still, because there are some bats that do suck blood, that's why they are often associated with vampires. And it's kind of an interesting take that these vampires turn into bugs rather than bats, because if anything, I feel like that's a little scarier.
Like I'd let you get away.
Yeah, so we saw some of the the powers that vampires have in these legends, such as inhuman strength, of course immortality, flying, shape-shifting. There are a few things that are special about her in particular, namely the height and also the claws. A lot of vampire mythology involves vampires that do have very sharp, almost claw-like nails, just because it's more associated with corpses or kind of like cat-like claws, but I've never seen them quite like that, where it's more out of X-Men.
Like I'd let you get away. You'll be sliced to ribbons.
So the accents are definitely not Romanian. They seem more British to me, which is interesting because usually it's a British person coming to Romania in these types of stories. It's kind of associated to xenophobia as well. The original Dracula book was a little bit about the fear of Eastern European men coming to the UK and defiling and seducing their women. But this is kind of a twist on that because they do not have Romanian accents. It's kind of reversed.
Where are you going, little one?
So traditionally in vampire mythology, when exposed to sunlight or daylight, vampires turn to ash. In some movies and TV shows, they also catch fire. Like I'm thinking of The Vampire Diaries, for example. It also seems like in this one she turns to stone at the end, so that's an interesting twist. So I'm looking at Dimitrescu's daughters, Bella, Cassandra, and Daniela. Cassandra, I'm not sure if that's a Romanian name. It definitely wouldn't be spelled with two S's if it were. Bella and Daniela, they could be Romanian. Okay, now I'm looking at Lady D. Alcina Dimitrescu. So she was designed to be a vampire. She has 3 black roses close to her heart, which represent her 3 daughters. That's interesting because I guess for vampires it wouldn't really matter so much your heart because it's not beating. So the things I think the game did well was the castle. It definitely looks like the stereotypical vampire castle, and like I said, it kind of is similar to the Peleș Palace in Sinaia. Also, I noticed that it was made of stone quite a bit, and in that sense it's also kind of similar to the Bran castle, which is actually supposed to be the Dracula castle, even though he never actually lived there. It is built within rock, within this precipice, so there are actually portions where you can walk up the stairs and there's rock on both sides. So in terms of architecture, I think it did pretty well. In terms of some of the parts associated with vampires as well, such as the strength, the blood-sucking, obviously, the shape-shifting, the dragon symbolism. The parts that weren't necessarily as accurate, I guess, would be the very tall height, the accents, and it definitely evokes the things that we love about vampires, which is the seduction of it, the danger, the power, and the nostalgia for olden times.
For more on IGN Experts Reacts, why not check out our playlist or our review on Resident Evil Village.